to you guys in the first segment of what zoning is, what's allowed, what you can build, how dense you can build. Then the second part, we're going to look at what goes into building costs. So what does it entail for you to actually build the property? What cost goes associated with that? And then we'll look at how they analyze acquisition costs. So we're going to start with zoning. So the very first thing for zoning is you look on the zoning map, and then the zoning map will give you various ideas of what is allowed. So let's go to our handouts that were provided to you and go to the zoning summary. Yeah, so let's look at the zoning summary. So we'll give an overview of zoning. So can everyone should have this already. So we'll try to blow it up a little bit more here. So as you can see,
let me start with, there are basically 5 different types of zoning. It's R for residential, B for business, C for commercial, M for manufacturing, and then there's a wide range of open things that are specific. PMDs, protected manufacturing districts, PUDs, planned unit developments. Those would be specific to that property. That you go in, you ask for a zoning change for that type of whatever you want, and that would be called a PUD or a whatever it is. But R is for residential, C is for commercial, B is for business.
And so they also dictate what the allowed usages are. So for like residential here in the city of Chicago, you can see that RS3 is designed to only be a single family home. Where you get to 3.5 and 4, well, now I'm doing 3 flats or townhomes. Those are going to be the highest and best use. Then you get to RM, residential multifamily. So 4.5, 5, 5.5, or even 6 deal with larger multifamily buildings. So we're only looking at the first 3 columns for right now. Then you get into your business zoning. And your business zoning starts with B. So the first number is always going to be the allowed uses. And in this case, B1, they're trying to keep it small scale retail of neighborhood shopping with dwelling units above it. Then you get to B, and you get to B2. This is a mixed use, which allows for residential on the ground floor. And then you get to B3. So this is going to be a community shopping or destination-oriented commercial establishment. And then same with your C1s, neighborhood commercial. C2 are larger sites, such as like maybe a Kohl's or a Best Buy with a large, maybe a Lowe's, a Home Depot, Menards. Then you get to C2, which are even larger, then you get to C3, which we don't have here, but C3 does not allow for any residential on it. So the higher the number, the more allowed usages are. And then we can go back to item number A, the Florida area ratio. So your Florida area ratio dictates how large of a building you are allowed to build. So your Florida area ratio is how large your building can be. So what developers do here is they always get a survey done. So now I'm on the handout spot survey. So with a spot survey, this is where you pay a surveyor to come and look at the lot dimensions. So here you can see, come on. So here you can see you've got 25 feet along Halsted, and then the lot goes 124 feet deep. And what a spot survey shows is it also shows all the improvements that have been put on the lot. So here you have a 3-story brick and stone building labeled 2652 North Halsted. You've got an iron porch. You've got a concrete pavement with a 2.5-story frame and block building with basement. It even has the dimensions of all of these structures. So it really shows all the improvements. Now, as a developer, when I want to tear down a building and build new, then on every survey, it's going to note how many square feet the lot is. And that is found up here. So this lot is 3,104 square feet. And that is very important for a developer on their Florida area ratio and their MLA, which now I'll let Rick take over on that.
So Florida area, by the way, every city will have their own zoning ordinances, and they're generally pretty easy to find. So this is pretty much the city of Chicago, but it carries through to almost every city ordinance as to what you can actually build on these. So the FAR is the Florida area ratio, which means nothing to a lot of people. And it's basically the square footage of a lot, which we just decided was 31. What was the square footage of that lot? 31.
3104.
It's 3104.
Yeah, 3104. And that was zoned, I believe, it was zoned C12. So if you go down the zoning summary to C12 and you get the FAR, it's sort of confusing. It says -1 through 5, okay? So then you got to go up to same as above. Oliver, where's it?
So the way you read this is you start with B1-1, B1-1.5, B1-2, B1-3, B1-5. So the second number in the zoning designation revolves around the FAR and the MLA. So regardless of if you're in B2, B3, C1, C2, whatever the dash is, you refer to the middle section of B.
So this was C12, and it's referring you to same as above -1 through 5. So if you go all the way up to B12, it says 2.2 is the FAR. So we have 3,104 square feet times 2.2 is what you're allowed to build.
So you would take that 3107 and for the Florida area ratio, you multiply 3104 times 2.2.
So you're allowed to build 6,828 feet on this property.
Does everyone understand how we got to that?
If you have a question, certainly ask. Okay, then we're going to run across here to the MLA, and C12 is what this was zoned, and it says the same, -1 through 5, same as above. So it's 1,000 square feet of land that you need for every dwelling unit. So how many units can we put on this property? How many square feet was it? It was 3,104.
So you take the amount of square feet and you divide by 1,000.
Yeah, so you could get 3
Right. Yeah,
lots on it.
3.1.
right. And
No.
you can't build a 0.5 or a 0.7, so it's 3, right?
Well, how do you define minimal lot area?
The zoning is dictated through statutory law by the city of Chicago. They have passed laws that stipulate density, and that density is defined as in a -2, it is 1,000 square feet of dirt per dwelling unit. And that is over retail. So in a C1-2, you can build 3 apartments over a retail space. Just like city zoning code also dictates how large your building can be, and that's the floor to area ratio. So I can put a commercial property and 3 apartments above it in a maximum 6,800 square foot property.
No, you're building 6,800.
Yeah, my building total is 6,800, and that involves the retail space and all 3 apartments. And then obviously zoning code, as you can see here, it also restricts the height of your building, and there are setbacks that you have to abide by from the alleyway, from the front of the street, and from your neighbor on the side. So obviously you want a higher second number, because as you can see in a C1-2, I can only build 3 units. But if I were to get the property rezoned to C1-3, my minimum lot area now goes to 400. So 3,104 divided by 400. Now you can build 7 units. So the higher the second number, the more dense
And the
that
FAR,
lot can be.
the FAR is bigger too. So the first number is the permitted uses that you could put in a commercial. And the second number dictates how many units you could build, how many square feet you can build is the second number always. So if it went from C1-2 to C1-3.
So what we're talking about here is if you Google search the Chicago zoning map, it's public record. You can go on and look at any parcel's designation. So our office is at 2711 North Halsted. So I put in that address and the map will show me that 2711 North Halsted is zoned B1-2. And so that means that we have to put commercial on the ground floor, and then under the -2 designation, we can build 3 units above it. And the building has to be 6,800 square feet maximum. You don't always have to maximize all of the building allotted square footage, but it is recommended because that gets you what we call highest and best use. So you can always search for that. Now, there are 2 types of changing your zoning through the zoning process, and that is through a variance or a special use permit. So a variance, you're going to go out and you're going to change maybe your setback requirements, where maybe you have a shorter lot. And what I mean by shorter lot is in the city of Chicago, the standard city lot is 25 frontage feet along your street, and it is 125 feet deep to the alleyway. And if you don't have a full length lot, you can go and ask for a variance on one of your setback requirements. Whereas when you go for a conditional use permit, let's say I have a house, single family home, and I want to put a daycare on that property. I can go get a special use or what we call conditional use permit to allow for a business in a residential district. Because if you're zoned residential, you're not allowed to put any businesses. And then if you are zoned, let's say B1, and the business that you want to put in there requires B3 zoning, you could go get a conditional use permit to allow your business to operate conditionally within a district that does not allow for it. And then your third type is you ask for a complete change of zoning. If you want a complete change, so let's say I have a B1-2 zoning and I want to go to B1-3. I have to go in front of the zoning board of appeals and ask for a zoning change. Currently, zoning changes are taking about a year
They're
a year at
become-
minimum. And
And it's 50-50 chance you get it.
correct, because it goes back to you make a petition with the alderman then goes to the community groups. The community groups get they get their input on whether or not to allow that zoning change. And if the community groups say no, you probably won't get the zoning. And any zoning change that you get now would require you to get affordable units in the property. So if you're building over 10 units, you are required to give 10% of your new development as affordable. So that is a gambit that you take. Some aldermen stick to the minimum 10%, and other aldermen are demanding 25 or
25 is
30%.
as high as 30.
Has to be affordable, meaning you have to be, 40% of the area median income?
Yes.
So 40% of the immediate income around the development would be what the rate you have to charge. And the city even writes it into a community agreement that gets recorded against the property of what units must stay affordable.
Yeah. So that we don't run over any zoning. So zoning really dictates, obviously, the size of the building, the type of the building, whether it's an investment or rentals or commercial or single family houses. We're always available. Zoning, the zoning book or the zoning ordinance itself is about 350 pages. We could spend.
I could spend an hour
We could spend
for the next 1 hour a day for the next
right.
year.
Lawyers go to
covering
school,
it.
and there's zoning lawyers, and that's who you always use a zoning lawyer whenever you're going to change zoning. Your architect will know exactly what you can build within the zoning.
You provide that spot survey to your architect, and they will instantly know exactly what structure that they can build. They know all the setback requirements. They know the maximum size of the building. And if they want to change, then like Rick said, you would hire a zoning attorney who would help you navigate City Hall on getting it done. Now, the city of Chicago is one of the more expensive cities to get it done because lawyers are expensive. Other municipalities they tend to be a little bit cheaper. And one of the largest expenses that you have to pay for to get a property rezoned is you have to send direct mail to every property owner within 500 feet that you are trying to get it rezoned. And then the last one for the zoning before we move on to building cost and land cost is planned developments. So outside of the regular zoning classifications, there are times when planned developments are required. So anything over 1 acre requires you to get a planned development. So there's a question, how do ADUs change zoning? What's an ADU?
I have no
Affordable dwelling unit? So when you change zoning after 2018, the city of Chicago mandates that all new zoning that you get would require that 10% of your building must be ADU, must be affordable dwelling units. And the city will set what the rental rates, that the maximum rental rates that you are allowed to charge. So that is the thing with any zoning change.
So it obviously affects the price of the land. So, and some of the aldermen are requiring 30%. So 30% of your units have to be rented out to affordable housing. You have to be within 40% less than the rest of the market. So it definitely affects the cost of the land.
And it affects what your sellout prices will be when you sell all the condos, because now the condo has to be sold affordable. Or if you rent it out as a rental building, you're not collecting 100% market rent. You're only getting 60% of market for that one unit. And if you have to put 30% of your units affordable, that's going to take a big hit on your profit or your net operating income.
That's why a lot of zoning changes aren't happening right now. People would rather build as of right or find a property that you can build as of right than to change the zoning and hit the affordable housing. It makes no sense. It diminishes the price of land. It's harder to build. So, any other questions? Okay.
So that kind of wraps up the overview of what, oh, sorry. I think I mean accessory dwelling units where I could rent out a coach house or a basement. Yes. So before we get to Nora, the question is accessory dwelling units are a new thing that the city is bringing back. And as of 1950, you were not allowed to build a coach house above your garage. And so a way of adding more affordable to existing structures is the city came out with 7 pilot areas where you were allowed to build a unit above your coach house as long as it was always affordable. And they also loosened converting what they used to call the in-law unit in the basement. It was owner occupied by an in-law and therefore it was illegal. And if you were to sell your building, you'd have to remove that basement unit for it to conform with zoning. Well, now Mayor Lori Lightfoot is easing that restriction and allowing you to build units in your basement as long as they always stay affordable. So that's not a change in, that's just a change in zoning law where they're loosening that restriction because like I said, in 1950, you are not allowed to build 2 separate structures on one lot. So that coach house was considered a separate structure. And through the accessory dwelling unit pilot program, you are allowed to build a coach house now. And if it goes successful, come, I think it's like May or June, that will then be allowed in all the wards. So there is only 7 pilot programs right now. And I think Nora had a question.
Yeah. Do you have any like green type zones?
So there are public park spaces that are on the map as green. As far as zoning for your individual lot, there is a requirement of how much green space you are required to have. So like a backyard.
Oh, I don't mean like green space, but like green housing, like eco-friendly housing.
It is in the zoning. Obviously, it has to have an R rating on the installation. It has to, larger units or commercial units have to have a reflective roof instead of a black roof. So there are certain things in the zoning ordinance that require certain environmental protection. Obviously, you can no longer use Freon in your air conditioners. There's an awful lot of that in the zoning ordinance itself.
Now they do offer some tax credits if you put like solar paneling or you use more green or energy efficient appliances. And there is the LEED
Right.
building rating, where if your building is not dependent on or uses, what is it, so much electricity, it's been built certain insulations.
Yeah, a lot of commercial buildings will have a certification and they'll get some sort of tax credits. I don't know if we're answering your question or not, but no, there's no certain areas that are deemed that. It's in the building code, and you can get certain tax credits for certain things that you do, mostly solar or sustainable energy, or
Okay.
or a large commercial building makes a lead or
LEED.
Yeah, then the commercial building will get tax breaks.
Okay, so it's more of an incentive, but not really required in in
Correct.
areas, it's not a thing.
That's
Correct.
right.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions out there before we move on to analyzing building costs? Okay, so then let's jump on to the next section, which deals with building costs. And so as a developer, they have to look at how much it's going to cost them to build a building. And as price of individual building components go up, so does the cost of the building as a whole. And so most developers look at it as a price per square foot. Now prices per square foot to build a new construction building is probably about $150 to $160 a square foot without finishes. So depending on the finishes that they want to put into the property,
Or with moderate finishes, you can build.
yeah, with well, condo quality, you're probably about 160 to 170.
Right.
And then super high-end luxurious, you're probably closer to $200 a square foot of what you build.
So Oliver, you got this sheet up?
No, so before we get to that, so the cost to develop it, it can range depending on the finishes. And then do you have to use union labor in the city?
No. You
What
don't.
happens if you don't?
You could have a rat out in front, but
So when you drive around, you see the rat, that means the union is protesting because that developer is not using union labor in the city. So I thought that'd be kind of a cool little point to just touch on. And then the permitting process is a very lengthy process because of all the different agencies that get involved with issuing a building permit. So your first step is you have to go and get the Department of Zoning to approve your plans. So they look at what you're trying to build and they ensure that it abides by zoning. Once they give you the green light, could take anywhere up to 4 weeks. Then you can go to the Department of Buildings and ask for a building permit. In the city of Chicago, if you don't have a building permit, you cannot do any demolition or any construction. So you have to have your plans on file.
and the Department of Buildings has their own, they have, you'll go through plumbing, electrical, HVAC.
And they
fire,
constantly come out and
right,
inspect you.
Fire, so you have to go through all of those proper agencies in the building department to get that permit. So your plans have to have every single thing in it, the electrical power, the plumbing, the HVAC, structural is always a big thing. So you go through all those different agencies in the building department before you get your permit. And that could take, the whole process is probably somewhere between 2 to 3 months to get a building permit.
To then start construction. So then let's all look at the handout that was provided called Developers Math. Sorry, Builders Math. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. Let me. So the Developers Math worksheet.
Construction costs, yeah.
So we're looking at the construction costs. So every developer, after they have figured out what they can build, then they go through and look at, well, what's it going to cost to build it? And they want to figure out their profits. So we have a lot size of 50 by 125. What is the lot size here?
What's the square footage?
What's the square footage of the lot size?
It's at 6250.
Yes. Now, what is the FAR that they can build?
You don't have the zoning in there.
Oh, so it's B12.
So what's the FAR in B12? So you go to B12
On your zoning
On your zoning.
summary,
summary,
you go to
And then
B12,
and then you go
Two
over,
point two.
what is it?
2.2.
That's correct, 2.2, that's correct.
and so what's the maximum square footage that the building allows?
It says 1,000 feet. per-
1,000 per unit.
No, okay, that's,
So that's the MLA. So before we get to how many units you can build, the FAR of 2.2 dictates the building total square footage. So how big of
Oh.
a building am I allowed to build?
Hold on a second.
we have
2
60
floors.
So 13,750, yes. So that is 6,250 multiplied by 2.2. And the total square footage of your building can be maximum of 13,750.
Let's go back to the MLA. So how many units are you allowed to build over the commercial? So go back to B12.
Yeah, that was 1,000, right?
Yes, so you take your lot square footage and divide by 1,000. So Gail took the maximum square footage and divided by 1,000. That's the wrong way to do it. It's always your lot
Lot
size
size.
divided by 1,000.
Okay,
So how many units?
that'd be 6,
6 units above the commercial.
right?
So let's say we have 2 commercials, so that's 8 units total. Divided by 13,000, so take 13,750 and divide it by 8. And that'll give you the rough square footage of every unit. This guy, this particular, so if we took,
It'd be 1,718 square feet.
that's right.
Yep.
Now, by 8,
Yeah, because there's only 7 here. So what this developer did is he built a storefront that's 1,700 square feet. And then he built 6 3-bedroom, 3-bath with 1 garage spot, 6 units that are all 1,350. So 1,350 square feet. He did 6 of them over his retail. And the reason he built them a little smaller is, as you can see here, his livable area is 9,800 square feet. And that's because he added an elevator to this building. He's got hallways and he's got other common areas for the commercial storefront. So his livable area tends to be a little bit smaller than normal, but he still maximized his FAR by building a 13,750 square foot property. Which this developer, since he did a rental building back in 2017, his cost to build the building, he told us, was $140 per square foot. So that means in order for him to build this building, it cost him $1,925,000 in construction costs. And then the price of the land was $1,522,500 to acquire the land.
let me back up one because I asked a question and the units came in bigger. But if you take all this, the actual units add up to 9,800 square feet. If you divide that by, well, let me go back. He's building 13,700. So you have 30% waste here. Typically in a building, you wind up with about 15 to 20% common areas, hallways, elevators. Your decks are included in the building square footage. The garages are not, but the decks are. So he has 29% common area waste here between the elevators and everything else. Normally you'd wind up with 15 to 20. He's got, so your cost becomes more for this building. He's got a very nice building. That's why he's getting $4,000 for rent for some of these. So,
Which then gets you into acquisition and how these developers analyze their acquisition costs. And it's one of two ways. They look at what the price per square foot is for the land, or they look at it as what's the price per unit. So if the guy bought this property for $1,522,500, what did he pay a price per square foot for the land?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
paid $1,522,500 for the land itself.
What
So-
did he pay as a price per square foot
For the land.
for the land? So that's how you analyze your land cost, is either a price per unit
Okay,
or price per square foot. So as a price per square foot, Israel got it right. It's $243.60 per square foot of land. Now, what did he pay per dwelling unit for the land? So you take your acquisition costs and you divide by the number of dwelling units. So 1,522,500 divided by 6.
Yeah, it's sort of confusing because you really got 7 units here.
Yeah.
right, that's, I did it by 7, but it comes out to
You're
6.
right.
It's 253,750 if I typed it in right.
Yes. So right there, a developer, if they are looking at it as a price per unit, they then look at condo sales, and the condo sale has to be whatever that acquisition cost is plus development cost, plus they want to make a profit. So if this developer is paying $250 a unit and he can only sell them for $350,000, is he making any profit off of it?
No, he's losing money.
Yeah, he's losing money. So why would he want to do it? So that's how some of these developers analyze what they can build and what they can sell it for before they even get into the next steps of this builder's math. And with every builder's math, they want to put what we call soft costs in there. So Rick, do you want to explain what soft costs are?
It's everything that's non-construction related. So it would be your building permits, the taxes that you're paying on the land while you're building, the interest you're paying on your mortgage while you're building, your commissions on the sales, soft costs. What is our soft cost here?
Up here under acquisitions.
No, I saw it, but what it's pretty low, right? It's percentage wise. Normally soft cost is about 20%.
This is 16.
We got 16%, okay. So we're gonna go through,
So soft costs you always want to factor in because they can also be described as what we call carry cost. It's the cost of carrying the property while you go through development until you get to your big payday, which is now the income and expense portion of this worksheet. And so now the developer will look at end sales. When I develop the property, what can I sell or rent my units for? And so based off of the size of the unit that he built and the finishes he's going to put on the properties or on the individual units, he's saying he can get $4,000 a month for the second floor, $4,100 for the third floor, and $4,500 for the fourth floor. So the first two units, he got $4,000 a month or $48,000 a year. You always look at, if you're doing a rental building in this scenario, you always get your annual gross rent. So the third and the fourth floor, the third floor, he ended up getting $4,100 and $4,300. So on the MLS, this is what he actually got. So we're analyzing what he actually got here. And then on the fourth floor, he got $4,800 and $4,550. And he rented out all 6 parking spots for $200 a month. And if he has the building fully rented, including the commercial space at $26.50 per square foot, his gross income fully rented is $368,450. And then the developer will look at all of the expenses that go into this property. So you always have taxes, you have insurance, you have water and scavenger, you have usually a 5% management fee to manage the building, common area electric and gas, we say 1% on maintenance for the year. He'll have leasing commissions. And then he has a vacancy rate. Vacancy rate, you always want to include because that's how often the property turns over, and that is lost rent. Every month it's not rented, you are losing money. So we just used an estimate of 4% on the conservative side. So he had a total of $127,336.25 in expenses for the year.
so he had a gross income of $368,450, and he has $127,336 in expenses. His expenses are 34% of his gross income. On a newer building, he's right in there. On a newer building, it's 25 to 30%. On an older building, it could be 35 to 50% if the landlord's paying janitors, gas, electric, and an older building, they'll pay a lot of that. So he's right in there. He's a little high on his expenses, but taxes have gone way up. I mean, he's paying $50,000.
So that's a big component of what developers are looking at is what's going to be my future tax bill. And they continue to go up. So your expense percentage of gross revenue will go up. So there you have the 3 boxes below all of that, talking about what your net operating income is.
Hold on, I'm gonna throw out a question here. So we know that he built this thing for $3,697,000 with the land acquisition. Okay. And we know that his net income is $241,113. What cap rate did he develop this building to?
So what cap rate did this developer develop the property to after spending $3.6 million
So you go back to my last week's ERV.
of net operating income And that is always over a rate or value. So if the value is your total acquisition costs of 3.697 million, what cap rate did he develop it to? So that's taking your cap rate and dividing, or sorry, your net operating income and dividing by the total construction cost.
Here it is. That's why last week, the reason I'm bringing this up is as we started last week, cap rates are so important to this business. So it's, if you want to keep that herb sheet for any future things you want to do, but anybody know what the cost was to develop, or the cap rate that he developed his property to? Go ahead.
That's 5%.
No, so this is if he were to sell the property.
Oh, okay. That's
What we're asking is what Gail just put in the chat room. This is the total acquisition cost. Okay, and this is the total income that he's going to get when he finishes it. So what we mean by what cap rate does he develop it to is what income does he get for the money he used to build it. So $241,113 divided by 3,697,500 gets you a 6.5% cap rate. So as a new construction development, based off of him developing it only to a 6.5% cap rate, he most likely would not sell this building unless the market is dictating he can get a 5% cap rate. Because then these three boxes are three separate sales scenarios in the event he wanted to list the apartment building for sale. So since he developed to a 6.5 cap, he's probably going to want to sell it at a 5 cap, which means that property would sell for 4.8 million, therefore giving him a $1.1 million profit or 30% return
On his total investment.
on his total investment.
And developers are usually looking for somewhere between 22 and 32% return on their investment, total investment. A lot of people make the error when they do the cap rates of not putting in the land acquisition. That'll get you in trouble.
So let me back up. Do you guys understand how I got to this $1.1 million profit? I took $4.8 million sale price, and I subtracted the total acquisition cost of 3.6.
Which is the
So,
land cost, the building cost, and the soft cost.
yep, construction, acquisition, soft costs. I subtract that from the sale price, and that then gets me this 1.1 or 30.42% profit. Now, if a investor only wants to pay 5.5 cap, so that 0.5% change in the cap rate took away almost half of his profit. So now he's only getting an 18.5% profit. And if he sold it for a 6 cap, now remember, he developed it to a 6.5. And so if he sells it for a 6, now he's only making a 8.68% profit. If it takes me 18 months to develop that project, do you want that large of a headache to only make an 8% profit? Probably not.
So, and then it goes back to your land cost. You know, if things are selling at 6 caps for a newer building, you could not pay. The construction cost is going to be the construction cost. You can't negotiate that. So now that starts to devalue the land cost, you know, so now you have to pay $1.2 million or $1 million, $1.1 million for the land in order to bring the cost down. You can't, the construction cost is non-negotiable.
So a flip side of this is if he wanted to make this a condo building, he's going to do something very similar. He's going to look at what he can sell all 6 units for. And that is your total sellout costs. And then you deduct that from your total acquisition cost, and that would show you your profit. So like Rick was saying, a developer is going to use this worksheet, and if the profit margin is too slim for them, the only aspect of this that you can change is what you buy it for. So now they're going to offer maybe $1 million or $1.2 million for the land, because like Rick said, your construction costs don't change and your end sales don't change. That's what market says the value is. That's all you're going to get for it. So you can only really negotiate a lower acquisition cost.
Assuming he's got 7 units here, what do you pay per unit?
So 1,500,000, 2,500 divided by 7 gets you what?
What are you doing?
What are you trying? Oh, total cost of, oh, sorry. Total cost divided by 7.
He has $528,000 per unit into this property already. So for him to make a profit of $700,000, he has to sell them for $630,000. And for him to make a profit of his $1 million, he has to sell, you know. So the question is, you know, are we starting to push the envelope on this? And the answer is yes. This was during some good times. Unfortunately, you know, the land acquisition at $1.5 million is almost $700,000 a lot is what he paid for it. Or no, more than that. $750,000 a lot is what he paid for this.
So yeah, so 528, 214. If he can sell the units for, what do you say, 640? At 640 a condo, that means he made a profit of 111,000
Per unit.
per unit.
Which is not enough return. It's $700,000 return on a $3.6 million investment. It's
So that's why this guy,
18% return, which is on the sheet. A developer wants a minimum 20%.
which is why this developer decided to go with a rental building. He'd rather develop it and just let it get rental income instead of doing condo sales. So all of this brain damage goes into whether or not the project makes sense to that developer.
So that is, I know it's a lot of brain damage, but
It's a lot of math.
it comes pretty easy. Once you learn the per square foot prices of either land or the construction, and the cap rates or the sales prices, and then the returns, it's all right here on this one sheet. I know we went through a lot of it pretty quickly, but this is exactly what a developer looks at when he's looking to build.
So then we have a question, does a condo conversion require another zoning change?
Good question, but no, it doesn't.
It does not, but it definitely adds to your soft cost, because now you have to file a declaration of condominium, you have to file your plans, you have to do surveys, you have a lot more that goes into converting a unit into, or converting a lot to condominium units. So that would just only increase your soft costs to do that. The zoning change is if you wanted to add additional condos to it. Do we have any other questions out there?
I know we went through a lot pretty quickly, but if you have questions, like I said, Oliver and I are always here. If you don't understand it, or you want to dive deeper into it, we'd be glad to help you, because this is a very quick We spent an hour on this and it's probably a 8-hour course. So
Yeah, zoning can be very difficult.
between zoning and building and sales and square footage and returns. Don't forget, when we say a guy's making $1.1 million or 30% profit on a 3.6 million, that wasn't really his money. Out of 3.6 million, he probably only had $1 million into it. So out of his cash, he made 100% profit on his cash, but he took the risk of borrowing the other $2 million. So
Yeah, so that also goes into when I raise that money to buy it, I'm probably borrowing money from investors at 10% interest or 12% interest. So I can't do a building that's only making 8 because now I'm paying those investors money out of my own pocket for taking that risk with me. Whereas if I can develop it and make a profit of 25%, then I can pay back my investor the 10 or 12% return, and then I get the additional profit. So that's just how different developers work on this. They don't always put their own cash down.
right.
So there's a question by Rebecca, will you have access to this recorded meeting? So yes. So I recorded the first one, I'm recording this one, and I'm going to record the third one. And then Donnie, our office administrator, is going to edit them and make a nice video that we will then make available to all of you guys to go back and review them. So we want to wait until that after the meeting next Monday, and then hopefully within a week or so after that meeting, I'll be able to share video with all of you guys for this. And please tell your friends about it. We're going to try to plan another commercial seminar here, probably next quarter.
Let us know what you would, I know I'm just looking at the sheet and thinking what we went through an awful lot of material tonight.
If you have ideas of what you'd like to see in the next one, please share them with us. I know one of the participants last week sent us some notes of different ways that we could make it better or change it. This is our first go at of a commercial seminar. So any feedback that you guys want to give us is much appreciated. Then there's
They wanted more on-screen things. I'm hoping we did that tonight. And if not, just let us know. I have very thick skin, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, you won't scare us. Critique is always the best way to better yourself, not only this way, but also as a salesperson. If you're afraid of critique, then sales will be definitely very hard. He bitches at me all the time of how I always screw things up, but that's how you learn, right?
It's been a long process.
Then you have another question out there. Do you know of any sustainable land developers, and is it becoming popular? That's kind of a two-part question. There are a lot of affordable only developers out there, and they're doing it for the tax incentives of doing 100% affordable because.
She's asking for sustainable.
Okay, I'll let you take that one then.
None that I know of. There are tax advantages, as I said earlier, for sustainable power, but there are no zoning or land that has sustainable zoning on it. Not in the city anyhow. Maybe I would guess in Seattle, maybe, but I'm just guessing there too. So.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's like, a thing to get into these days with the concern of, environment issues and.
It might be more popular out in the suburbs, but in the city of Chicago, it's not really that big or a priority, I should say.
I don't know. I don't know what your question is. Yes, there's a demand for it. And yes, there are some tax incentives, but no, there is not a zoning or areas of the city or suburbs that I know of that have sustainable, that make you build to sustainable standards. Beside our typical zoning, which has a lot of sustainable, insulations, R factors, they do have a lot of that in our zoning. I'm sorry, in our permit process.
Well, and I'm just wondering, like for building or I guess land development, is it a popular thing? Is it something to go into specializing in that, in those?
I was a builder. I think if I was a builder, my guess would be yes. There would be some sort of a demand for that. I mean, that's, I know my brother just bought a Tesla and he's putting solar panels on his garage roof to charge the Tesla. So it's going that way for sure, but it hasn't taken off yet. So.
And there's another question out there. Do you see developers looking to build in opportunity zones? And yes, there are a lot of developers that are trying to, or investors trying to park money in an opportunity zone. We're going to probably design a whole hour course about opportunity zones for the next commercial seminar.
We have somebody in our organization that specializes in opportunity zones.
And as long as you put your money there for 10 years, then your capital gain is almost eliminated. But you do have to make improvements and whatnot, but it's a good way of reinvesting in these opportunity zones to defer your gain. And then TIFs are, a TIF district is money that the city gives a developer for public infrastructure. And it's tax increment financing where these areas have the portion of their taxes set aside for a developer to tap into. So like Sterling Bay got a couple $1 million in TIF money because they're redoing the Cortlandt Street Bridge, they're adding a bridge, and they're adding other public infrastructure. So it's almost a reimbursement from the government to creating that public infrastructure. The 78 is a same thing of Lincoln Yards, but down on the South Loop by Michigan. And the 18th Street CTA station is being redeveloped by Related with that TIF money.
I got a quick question.
Yes.
Is the consumer willing to pay more for the green stuff?
It all depends on buyer preference.
Right. You know what? It's so new. There's not, I believe, yes. Will they pay, what percentage will they pay more? And what percentage more does it cost to build it? I don't know, but yes, the answer is, listen, if you can tell a consumer that it's his heating bills are going to be, or his air conditioning bills are going to be well under $100 a month, they'll take that into consideration. Now, what did it cost the developer to build it that way? And is there a profit in it? It's a good question. It's still all fairly new. As I said, my brother with his Tesla is doing solar panels, and the solar company says we're doing 7 of them right now. 7's not a big number for as many Teslas that are out there, but people are starting to look at it. So tax incentives would really help. And I think with the Biden administration, there probably will be some tax incentives for solar or green energy. So everybody loves a tax incentive.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other questions before we sign off here?
All right. Well, it's good to see you guys. And
again, any feedback we'd appreciate, and
and any future topics you'd like to see us cover, by all means, email us your topics, and hopefully you'll have that at one of our future seminars. And we will see you guys next week at 6 p.m. for financing and the different financing techniques that developers utilize or commercial investors.
And this all goes back and forth. The cap rates we did last week, the building costs that we just did today, they'll all go back into the financing. And they flip back and forth constantly.
So as you guys can see, cap rates are very important to understand when doing commercial real estate.
All right.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you
guys. See you next week.